What occurs when pure musical genius collides with a society built on wealth and status? The moment his hands found those keys, the mockery began. They had no idea he was about to turn their world upside down. Join the incredible journey of Elijah Carter, a 13-year-old self-made piano virtuoso from Charleston's close-knit East Side community, as he steps into the pristine halls of Ashley Hall Preparatory Academy, an institution where bloodlines trump ability and family heritage outweighs aspiration. Faced with the cutting words of privileged student Caroline Prescott, "Stay away from things you could never afford to break," Elijah confronts a life-changing moment. Should he retreat in shame or allow his musical voice to rise above their discrimination? Prepare to be moved and motivated by this extraordinary tale. In the worn halls of the John L. Davis Community Center, Elijah Carter's hands danced across the weathered keys of an aging Baldwin upright. The instrument, bearing scratched ivory and dampened pedals, had once served a local church before finding its way to the center years earlier. For Elijah, it became his sanctuary. Small and lean for 13, Elijah appeared unremarkable in his faded clothing and worn sneakers. Yet when he settled at that piano bench, everything else disappeared. Hunched over the keyboard with intense focus, he carefully worked through fragments of Debussy's Clair de Lune, relying solely on memory, and a cracked phone screen displaying tutorials he'd watched countless times. "Boy, you keep working like that, folks gonna think there's magic flowing through those hands," called Mr. Frank, the building's custodian and occasional piano tuner who'd grown fond of the dedicated young musician. Glancing up with a shy smile, Elijah replied, "Almost mastered the second movement." Frank approached thoughtfully, stroking his beard. "Playing French Impressionist music without formal training and on half a keyboard. Lord only knows what you'd accomplish with a proper instrument." That evening, the rich aroma of his grandmother's red beans and rice filled their modest two-bedroom, Liberty Heights apartment. While Elijah sketched chord progressions on notebook paper, his younger sister Ava colored beside him at the kitchen table. His grandmother observed from the stove, speaking with gentle authority, "Mine's back on that music again, I see." He nodded eagerly. "Mr. Frank mentioned I might get to tour that upscale school down on the Battery, Ashley Hall." Her eyebrows rose. "Ashley Hall? That fancy place where the politicians send their children? All uniforms and classical music?" "They have Steinway pianos, Grandma, real concert grands and dedicated practice rooms." His eyes sparkled with possibility. "Miss Kelly recorded me playing and sent it to them. They actually responded." Setting down her spoon, she joined him at the table, hands folded. "You've got a genuine gift, sweetheart. No question about that. But those people live in an entirely different reality. Just don't let anyone diminish your worth." Though Elijah remained quiet, hope and nervousness swirled within him. 2 days later, a yellow school bus wound past Rainbow Row and through Ashley Hall Preparatory Academy's guarded entrance. The campus resembled something from Elijah's wildest dreams. Ivy-covered red brick structures, courtyard fountains, and wrought iron lanterns illuminating arched walkways. Fellow exchange students from Charleston's public schools disembarked, nervously chatting among themselves. Elijah clutched his thin folder of printed music, palms sweating. His finest polo shirt was carefully tucked into pants his grandmother had pressed that morning, while his dress shoes, outgrown months ago, pinched uncomfortably. "Welcome to Ashley Hall," announced a tall woman in a navy blazer at the gates. "We're delighted to host your visit today. You'll explore our campus, witness a student showcase, and meet some of our advanced music pupils." The group was escorted to the Music and Arts Center, a sleek, glass-lined white building bearing the brass nameplate Prescott Hall. Inside, Elijah's attention immediately fixed on the grand piano positioned near the sun-drenched atrium. Never had he encountered such magnificence. A gleaming black Steinway Model D concert grand, polished to mirror perfection. He moved closer, slowly, fingers trembling with anticipation. "Don't even consider it," the sharp command sliced through the air. Startled, Elijah turned to face a girl his age, blonde curls perfectly styled, pearl earrings catching the light, wearing an expression of obvious disdain. "I said hands off," she repeated, stepping nearer. "That's a $140,000 Steinway, not some playground toy." "I was only admiring it," Elijah responded, instinctively backing away. "Sure you were," she said with thick sarcasm. "You're one of those scholarship students, aren't you?" Elijah blinked, taken aback. "I'm Caroline Prescott," she continued, chin raised proudly. "My family funded this entire wing. That piano bears my name, literally." Elijah noticed the engraved plaque. "Donated by the Prescott family in honor of Caroline Ann Prescott." "I know how to play," he whispered. Caroline laughed sharply, drawing nearby students' attention. "Oh, really? What, Mary had a little lamb, perhaps? Happy birthday?" "I can play Debussy," Elijah said with growing confidence. Several students turned at this. Caroline smirked knowingly. "Well then, let's see what you've got." Elijah stood motionless, Caroline's challenge weighing heavily on his slender frame. The gathered students had ceased their conversations, anticipating drama. He surveyed the room, uncertain if this was genuine opportunity or elaborate trap. His pulse quickened, not from fear, but from something deeper, the rising determination born from years of silent practice on damaged keys and borrowed time. Slowly and purposefully, he stepped forward. "Very well," he said, voice steady and controlled. He settled onto the bench as if it were meant for him, hands suspended above the keys. Briefly closing his eyes, he let the noisy corridor, judgmental stares, and Caroline's mocking words fade away, drawing instead on memories of quiet evenings at the community center, practicing until the lights went dark. His fingers discovered the opening chords of Clair de Lune. Tentative initially, then growing fuller and more confident, the Steinway responded like silk, sensitive in ways his old upright never could be. Each note bloomed from the instrument, luminous and haunting. Conversation ceased. Footsteps stopped. Even Caroline's expression shifted from amusement to uncomfortable disbelief. As Elijah navigated the piece's dreamy middle section, silence enveloped the atrium. Staff members paused in doorways, faculty emerged from practice rooms, and more students gathered, drawn by the unexpected magic flowing from the piano. The contrast between the elegant surroundings and the boy in scuffed shoes created strange, beautiful tension. Still he played, not for them, not to prove anything, but because he had to. This was his language. When the final notes faded into silence, nobody moved initially. Then came hesitant applause, growing stronger until the entire atrium erupted in appreciation. A music teacher, tall, wearing a gray vest and glasses, approached through the crowd. "That was Debussy, correct?" he asked with genuine interest. Elijah stood uncertainly. "Yes, sir." "Self-taught?" "Yes, sir." The teacher appeared genuinely impressed. "You possess remarkable musical intuition. That transcended mere accuracy. It had soul." Caroline, still frozen in place, attempted to regain control. "It was adequate," she said coolly, though conviction had left her voice. "But that doesn't mean he belongs here." A few friends murmured agreement, but uncertainty colored their tones. The vested man turned to her. "And you are?" "Caroline Prescott. I'm the principal student pianist here. My recital is next month." He nodded politely. "I've heard of you. Your technique is exceptional." She smiled tightly. "Thank you." Then he addressed Elijah again. "Would you consider performing once more? We have a faculty recital this Friday. Informal, but students are welcome. It would let you play for our director, Dr. Ellison." Elijah looked surprised. I'm not sure." "Consider it," the teacher said. "I'm Mr. Bennett. Let me know your decision." As he departed, Elijah found Caroline still glaring. "That was beginner's luck," she said curtly. "Don't expect it to last." Elijah didn't argue. His body still hummed, with the sensation of playing the Steinway. No words were necessary. The music had already spoken. Returning home that evening, his grandmother immediately noticed the change. Elijah moved with quiet confidence, shoulders straighter, steps more assured. "Everything all right, baby?" she asked, stirring sweet potatoes. "I performed," he said simply, "on a real concert grand. They've invited me back Friday." She paused, studying him with softening eyes. "Well then, we'd better find you something more formal to wear." Friday arrived, and Elijah returned to Ashley Hall wearing a second-hand blazer borrowed from a neighbor. Though slightly large in the shoulders, he wore it with pride. Mr. Bennett welcomed him at the recital hall entrance, an intimate space lined with velvet seating and oil portraits of former faculty. A few dozen people had already assembled: teachers, students, and some parents. Caroline sat near the front in stunning black blouse, hair elegantly twisted. She acknowledged him with a brief nod, neither warm nor hostile. Mr. Bennett introduced Elijah as a promising young pianist from the community, then stepped aside. Approaching the piano, Elijah's heart hammered. This time he selected something different: Chopin's Nocturne in E minor. He'd heard it only occasionally, but had studied its phrasing through careful listening, using slow-motion videos and countless hours of analysis to capture its subtleties. As he played, the room fell into that same stunned silence from earlier in the week. The music was gentle and intimate, yet filled with longing that touched every listener's heart. He didn't execute it flawlessly, missing a pedal change and clipping a high note, but it didn't matter. His connection to the music was raw and undeniable. When he concluded, the applause was more than courteous. It was admiring. Even Dr. Ellison, the Academy's music director, stood at the back, nodding thoughtfully. During the reception, Dr. Ellison approached Elijah and Mr. Bennett. "That young man possesses something extraordinary," she said. "If he isn't already auditioning, he should be." Mr. Bennett turned to Elijah. "Would you consider applying here next semester?" Elijah's eyes widened. I don't know how we could manage the costs." "We provide scholarships," Dr. Ellison said gently. "And we make space for talent like yours." Nearby, Caroline stood silently, arms crossed. She too had performed flawlessly that evening. But the conversation wasn't centered on her. What clouded her features now wasn't simple bitterness, but something more complex: resentment mixed with confusion and perhaps reluctant respect. Driving home that night with his grandmother, Elijah stared out the window, mind racing. He'd always dreamed of a place where music could be more than secret passion, where it might become his future. Now that future seemed within reach. The following Monday, Elijah returned to Roosevelt Middle with renewed purpose, not arrogance, but quiet, grounded pride that came from being truly seen and heard, not just by those familiar with his struggle, but by people who had previously overlooked him entirely. Back in regular clothes, carrying the same battered music folder, something fundamental had shifted within him. During lunch break in the music room, Miss Kelly greeted him with tears and a brilliant smile. "They contacted me," she said, voice trembling. "Ashley Hall wants you to audition. They said the board was deeply moved by your performance." "Elijah," she paused, shaking her head in amazement. "You've opened something extraordinary." By Thursday, the letter arrived. Ashley Hall formally invited Elijah to audition for the upcoming academic year, noting that full scholarship consideration would be available. His grandmother read it aloud 3 times before looking at him and simply saying, "See, baby, sometimes your origins don't define you. It's what you carry inside that matters." Word spread quickly through his neighborhood. Miss Thelma at the community center brought extra snacks. Mr. Frank spent additional evenings working on dynamics and posture. Even the local barber offered a complimentary cut before the big day. On audition day, as Elijah walked onto Ashley Hall's campus in a clean shirt and properly fitting slacks, Caroline Prescott observed from a distance. Her expression remained unreadable. Since the recital, she'd maintained her distance. During rehearsals for the upcoming winter performance, she practiced longer than usual, her fingers moving over Liszt and Rachmaninoff with surgical precision. But something had shifted. For the first time, she wasn't the only name whispered about in the music wing. Now it was Elijah's name that carried surprise, excitement, and something she couldn't quite identify. Perhaps envy, but mixed with grudging respect. Elijah's audition was scheduled for late afternoon in the formal recital hall. Dr. Ellison and 3 faculty members sat at a long table with clipboards ready. Taking the bench, Elijah inhaled deeply and positioned his fingers over the keys. He began with his strongest piece, Chopin's Nocturne in E minor, but added more expression, breath, and risk than ever before. Next came a Bach invention, recently self-taught by ear, which, though lacking textbook perfection, carried life and curiosity. He concluded with a blues improvisation, entirely his own creation, letting his fingers narrate a story only he could tell. Upon finishing, no applause followed, just the quiet scratch of notes being written. Dr. Ellison finally looked up. "Thank you, Elijah. We'll contact you very soon." Outside in the crisp Charleston air, he found Caroline leaning against a column. Gone were her usual polished uniforms. Instead, she wore jeans and a hoodie, hair in a casual bun. "That was pretty impressive," she said matter-of-factly. Elijah blinked. "Thank you." She didn't move. "I've been playing since age 4, she said quietly. "My father flew me to Boston for master classes. I've performed at Carnegie's Youth Series. I understand what excellence requires." Elijah remained silent. "But when you perform," she continued, eyes narrowing slightly, "it's like you're not trying to impress anyone. You just experience everything. That's what captivates people." "I'm not trying to defeat anyone," Elijah replied. "I just want to make music." Caroline studied him intently. Really looked at him. "You're not what I anticipated." "Neither are you," he responded. The official acceptance arrived the following week in a crisp white envelope with gold seal. Full scholarship, complete tuition, music supplies, mentorship, and even transportation allowance. Elijah stared at the letter, heart pounding so loudly he barely heard his grandmother's joyful tears behind him, arriving for his first day at Ashley Hall that spring. Familiar uncertainty returned. The polished corridors, marble hallways, voices echoing through spaces that had never belonged to him. But he was here now, and not by chance. He was paired with Caroline for a duet at the upcoming spring gala, Mozart's Sonata for 2 pianos in D major. The news surprised them both. Dr. Ellison's note read simply, "There is beauty in contrast. Let your differences create something wonderful." Rehearsals began awkwardly. Caroline was methodical, brilliant, and precise. Elijah was fluid, intuitive, and spontaneous. Initially, their sessions were tense, filled with quiet corrections and occasional frustration. Gradually, they began truly listening to each other. Caroline started creating space in her phrasing, allowing Elijah's improvisational instincts to flourish. Elijah began focusing more on rhythm, discipline, and clean technique. Their styles didn't merely blend, they conversed. The night of the gala, the performance hall glowed with warm light and murmurs from Charleston's elite. Backstage, Elijah stood with damp palms. Caroline joined him, smoothing her elegant burgundy dress. "Ready?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "Almost," she corrected, then glanced at him. "Remember to breathe." Taking the stage, the room quieted. There, 4 hands met the keys in perfect unison, Mozart's Sonata springing to life. It was joyful and light, yet profound, a dialogue between 2 people who had once stood on opposite sides of the room. They concluded to a standing ovation. Elijah scanned the audience, spotting his grandmother standing proudly, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. He saw Mr. Frank, Mr. Bennett, Miss Kelly, and Caroline's parents seated prominently, clapping politely but clearly surprised. Afterward, as the crowd mingled, Dr. Ellison approached them. "That," she said softly, "was the sound of possibility." Caroline smiled, then nudged Elijah. "Still think you don't belong here?" Elijah smiled back. "I think I belong wherever music lives." Caroline nodded. "Then I suppose you've found your home." Dear friends, some pianos remain locked behind glass barriers, and some talents develop in silence. But occasionally, when the right hands meet the right moment, everything transforms. Elijah's journey reminds us that what fills your heart matters more than what fills your bank account, and that genuine music, the kind that truly moves people, doesn't recognize zip codes. If this story resonated with you, please share it. Let it remind others that brilliance can emerge from anywhere, and that kindness, humility, and courage speak louder than any standing ovation.